Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Genuine Being. My name is Lodro. It is a pleasure to be back with you for the second of our videos in this series. Last time we talked about a pretty big notion around this topic of genuine being, which is that when we get out of our own way, when we drop some of the ways that we hold ourselves in anxiety and stress and pain, we might discover that we are basically whole, complete good as is. We talked about this through the lens of the Four Noble Truths. Yes, one, there is suffering. Suffering exists. It's a thing. We know it. We look outside, we read the news, we get it. On a personal level, we get it, where it's like our own internal strife, interpersonal. I know there's a lot of people in our community who are struggling with family members or friends, and different conflicts there. And then societally, we're having a very hard time right now. So suffering is real. Two, part of why, or the Buddha just said straight up, not part, but like he said, why we suffer? We suffer because we're always craving for things to be different. We're craving things to be other than what they actually are in reality. We are ignorant to reality as it is, and that causes us more pain. We'll circle back to this in a little bit. Third, the good news truth. Three, underneath the layers of stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves trapped in suffering is that sense of basic goodness, wholeness, completeness inside us. This is who we inherently are. We have the same seeds of awakening as the Buddha. This is incredibly good news. And four, how do we do that? We pursue the path of mindfulness and compassion. We pursue a life of practice and study that can help wake us up, that can help unhook us from the ways that we keep ourselves trapped in suffering. And so this all sounds good, right? I assume we're in agreement here that this sense of, oh yeah, I want to connect to that sense of wholeness and completeness. That sounds awesome. But if I were you, I would also be sitting there saying, okay, I get everyone has basic goodness. Everyone is basically good. That's who they are, except for me. If Lodro actually knew what I go through with my family and the ways that I lost my stuff at my neighbor, or if, then Lodro wouldn't think that I'm basically good. And I sort of need to call bullshit on that. I've been through it all before. I've worked with many people over the course of my lifetime as a meditation teacher. I've been doing this almost for 20 years now. We're coming up on 20 years. And the bottom line is, everyone I've met is basically good. It's not a belief. It's an experience that I've had. It's not some sense of like, oh, I'm sure they're okay underneath all that. It's like, okay, even when people are in their confused state, acting out in ways that actually cause themselves or others harm, there's still a seed of goodness underneath. Not only do I believe that, I've seen that for myself. And we can debate this, and we have a monthly call coming up, of course, and that's wonderful, on the 19th. But I wanted to work from this basis that we are basically good, and you're not excluded from that. I believe that you're basically good. I know it to be true. What is that voice then that says, no, Lodro, if only you knew, you would say otherwise? Maybe you don't have that, by the way, which I hope. I really do hope that's the case for you, that you're like, yeah, I know I'm basically good. I live from that experience all the time. But most of us have a hiccup. It's either most of the time we spend lost in feelings of unworthiness and not feeling good, or just these hiccups. What I mean by that is like we're going about our life, we're feeling whole and complete, and then we get thrown a curveball and we fall down a rabbit hole of doubt. And this is our topic today. What is the primary thing that blocks us from feeling whole, complete, good as is? What keeps us from genuinely being all of who we are? Doubt. Specifically, the term is the trap of doubt. So how do we overcome our doubt? Quick story. There's, back when I wrote the book Love Hurts, Buddhist Advice for the Heartbroken, there was a period of time where I was getting emails daily, and now I think it's trickled down to 3 times a week, however many years later. But I've gotten hundreds of emails from people from this book, but it's a very particular email. In that book, I wrote a chapter of a time in my life when I was feeling really alone, feeling really heartbroken. I had gone through a bad breakup, and I called up a friend and I said, listen, I'm sure it's true, but I just need someone else to say, can you please tell me that I'm going to love again? And my friend said, of course. I believe that. And, I know who you are, and I know that you will love in many ways, romantically and otherwise. You will live a life full of love. And it was so wonderful to hear that, and so comforting. And I wrote that chapter saying, if you feel this way, you can email me, and I will call you, and I will tell you that sort of thing, that you will love again. So here I am, several years and hundreds of emails later, with this continuous, here's my story, or just a phone number, no comment, just here's my number. I still call these people every time that I get these emails, so a couple times a week. And I often will get voicemails. I'll just say something along the lines of what I just said to you, which is, that there's, even in the sort of devastating, heartbreaking times, the good news, if there is good news, is that they're impermanent, and that we can change and heal, and ultimately that pain will fade and we will love again. I really do believe that, because in our core of who we are inherently loving and lovable. At our core of who we are basically good. This is a tangent, by the way. Because the point, actually, underneath that tangent is that with all of these emails, the common thread over hundreds of them is not, this person broke my heart and they're bad. It's, this thing happened and I feel that underneath all of this, maybe I'm not worthy of love. And that's why I won't love again. So, as you can imagine, this means a couple times a week I just sit there deeply heartbroken that these people feel this way. Maybe you felt this way in the past. I had. That maybe I'm just not worthy of love. I'm not good enough. I'm not together enough. I'm not capable of being loved. That's what these emails are sort of communicating. Sometimes quite viscerally saying these words, but more often than not, somewhat subtle. Everyone else, sure, they're worthy of love. Everyone else is basically good. Everyone else. Me, not so much. That's the point of these things. So it's an honor, really, to be able to contact these people and just remind them of their basic goodness and their inherent ability to love and be loved. But this trap of doubt is what that is. That's the doubt that I'm talking about. Not doubt like, ooh, do I look good in orange? I don't, by the way. But like a sense of deep, inherent, insidious, sorry, I shouldn't say inherent. I don't think doubt is inherent to who we are. Is deep and insidious, sort of shadowy thing that gets its hooks into us and says, no, 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 you're not good enough. You're not whole. You're not complete. That's what I mean when I refer to the trap of doubt. How can that manifest? It can manifest as you're not worthy of love. You're not worthy of that job. You're not worthy of that promotion, whatever it might be. So this trap of doubt is the obstacle that blocks us from our genuine being, from being all of who we can be. Maybe you're meditating one day. Maybe you're sitting there and you just feel okay, just for a moment. You're with the breath, and you're in the present moment, and you're like, this is great. But then a thought arises. You jerk. You don't get to rest. You need to do more than this. You're wasting your time, or better yet, you're a waste of time. You need to get up and go do things. And that's doubt. That, like, even in the meditation practice, we might experience that sense of like, no, 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 you need to do more, be more, accomplish more. That's the trap of doubt. So hopefully this is clear what I'm referring to. Maybe you already experienced it, and if you haven't, if this isn't clear, the good news is the way that this trap of doubt is often talked about, it manifests in 6 ways. So I'm going to take us through all 6. The first of these ways that this sort of insidious thing that hooks into us can manifest as is anxiety, which may not be unfamiliar to many of you. So from a Buddhist point of view, anxiety is when we fall into the trap of doubt. When we start to doubt our basic goodness. We begin to question whether at our core we're basically good, whole as is, and then we begin to buy into the notion that if we could only get that thing out there, then we would be happy. So that thing may be a perfect partner, a perfect job, a perfect kid, a perfect home, a perfect exercise routine. It could be any number of things. But if we get really curious about our experience, we begin to realize that we're always looking for something new, something more that will make us whole. And that is the second of those 4 noble truths that I referred to. That we're always craving for something more. When we don't have that thing, We feel anxious and we crave it. That's the second level truth. We're craving. When we get that thing, we get anxious and crave something new. This is how we perpetuate our own suffering. But this is that sense of anxiety. Like, no, I'm not okay as is. I need more than me. I need to get something out there, and then I'll be okay. So let's go with an example here. I jotted one down. You are up for a promotion at work, and you say, oh my gosh, if I get this promotion, I can finally move out from my crowded roommate situation, and I can get my own place, and da-da-da-da. And there's two ways that this goes. One, you get the promotion. Congratulations, this is wonderful news. And you say, yes, and maybe you bask there for a moment or two, but then you immediately say, oh my gosh, but how am I going to break the news to my roommates? They're going to be heartbroken that I have to leave. Oh, and then I have to get a new place of my own. It's so stressful to move. And there we are, right? We got the thing that we were anxious about, and then we went on to become anxious about something else. Or we're sitting there and we're anxious about whether we get the promotion, and we don't get it. That's the second way this can go. What happens then? Do we sit there and say, oh, there's sadness, I'm going to be with my sadness? No. More often than that, we say, what does this mean? Does this mean that they don't like me at work? Does this mean that I'm not going anywhere? Does this mean I have to shift jobs? And we become anxious about that. So there's always like this sense of anxiety is going to find new ways to get its hooks into us, new things that it's going to ask our attention to dwell on. When we get the thing, we move on to a new thing. We don't get the thing, we freak out about what we didn't get. This is not helpful. This is a way that we hold ourselves in stress. This is a way that we lock ourselves in the trap of doubt, because we're always looking for something new, always looking for something new to freak out about and to be anxious about. So what's the antidote? Because it would be silly of me to sit here and just list a bunch of obstacles and ways that doubt manifests, but what do we do with that information, right? We can look anxiety in the eyes, not run from it. We don't have to spin out all of the stories listed in that example of the promotion. We don't have to go down the rabbit hole. Well, will my roommates hate me? Or if we don't get it, what does this mean about my role, my job? We can actually just sit with the emotion of anxiety. Just feel it for what it is. Letting it move through us without spinning out the same three stories. We acknowledge the stories, we come back to feeling the feeling. We come back to the present moment. This is, by the way, what we're training in meditation. That we're constantly training in the ability to just be present with what is going on, to acknowledge when stories arise, and to come back to the present moment. When we do shamatha, calm abiding meditation, also known as mindfulness of the breath, that's all we're doing. We acknowledge that story about the roommates or the job or whatever, and we acknowledge it, we come back to the breath. Oh my God, but what about, we acknowledge it, we come back to the breath. We literally rewire the brain when we do that, to not chase after every single story that's going to cause us anxiety, but to come back to the present, to come back to that sense of wholeness, that sense of completeness as is. So I realize, particularly for people who are watching the daily, and maybe there's different practices coming out, you can do one here and one there. Sometimes what might be most helpful is just being with the body breathing, just to do the shamatha practice, because it is such a powerhouse in training in so many different aspects of how we look at what we're working with here. Shamatha is such a great way to work with anxiety, which is a manifestation of the trap of doubt. And doubt, there's no room for it in the present moment. Like when we're actually fully present, there's no that insidious shadowy voice that says, oh, you're not good enough. It's not there. We just feel whole, complete, good as is. And we're actually present in the body, present in this moment. Whew, that's a lot. I've only gone through the first one. Don't worry, I don't think they're all going to be as long as this. So how else does this trap of doubt manifest for us? Anxiety. The second one I want to mention is jealousy. You are with a group of friends and you find out that they've all made plans without you. And all of a sudden you say, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Something must be wrong with me that they don't want to spend time with me. Of course, it's the fact that they all have this one hobby in common, you've expressed complete disdain for it. It has nothing to do with you. But we make everything very personal. Saying, so there must be something wrong with me. I'm jealous that they get these things, or that they're doing this thing without me. And when the world doesn't treat us the way that we expect it to, we end up disappointed. And in some cases, we feel envy for those people over there that we perceive have it much better off than we do. That means that we don't feel whole and complete in ourselves. So we get jealous of that person who has more money than us, or is married while we're single, or has a house while we're stuck in a crummy apartment. Or when we begin comparing ourselves to others, it brings us no joy. One antidote when we are lost in jealousy is to remember that everyone is suffering in their own way. This is, of course, building on what we talked about in the last session around the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering, everyone experiences it. So the person who has so much money, maybe they're also lonely a lot of the time. The person who's married, maybe they're struggling to pay their bills. That beautiful house maybe is falling apart and is stressing everyone who is living there out. No one has their act completely together. So we have to remember that these people may not always display their issues on their sleeves, but as a result, we can have kindness toward them because they're definitely there. Those issues are definitely there. So realizing the fact that even the people we may feel jealous of have their own struggles, reflecting on their humanity can be helpful in waking us up from that feeling of jealousy. And then we can come back and rest more profoundly in the present moment and reconnect to that sense of genuine being all of who we are, with our whole gamut of goodness and wholeness. 3, anxiety, jealousy, forgetfulness. Wouldn't that have been horrible if I forgot forgetfulness? So sometimes we're so lost in the stories we tell ourselves about how we're not enough, we lose all track of the details of our life. We fall into this repetitive stories we tell ourselves, and it takes so much of our mental energy that there's nothing left even to remember what's happening in the present moment. Have you ever walked into a room and you were so lost in your head, you looked up and you realized you have no clue why you were even there in the first place? This is how our own self-doubt hijacks our minds and makes us forgetful. So how do we counter this? To counter the symptom of forgetfulness, it's a good idea to slow the F down. So we walk slower. We take the time to sip our beverage and to taste it when we do so. We notice our surroundings. We notice the beautiful ceiling or the paint color or the plant or whatever it might be. The act of physically slowing down might help bring you back into the present moment, where you can once more reconnect to your own basic goodness, pulling yourself out of the trap of doubt in the subsequent forgetfulness. So that's 3. 4 is arrogance. You could even just take a moment now to imagine the most arrogant person you know. Instead of getting lost in the emotions around what a jerk they are, just take a moment to consider this. Is it possible they might actually be experiencing a lack of confidence and are overcompensating? It's worth considering. When we don't feel very good about ourselves, we have a tendency to pull ourselves up, to sort of to puff ourselves up, to make ourselves feel superior, to make up for that big black hole of doubt that we're experiencing. So instead of looking directly at your sense of self-doubt, you might spend that mental energy telling yourself that you're right and anyone who disagrees with you is wrong, or how you're smarter or better than those people you're having an issue with, and this can frankly be exhausting. Particularly during these times where things feel very polarized, it's very easy for us to say, but those people are just wrong, and I'm right. My wife was She read something a while ago, and she keeps referring back to it and reminding me of it, which is very smart of her. That these days people are more interested in being lawyers than scientists, is how she put it. That we're more interested in deciding what we believe and then finding the information that will support our case than being scientists, people who are willing to explore and test out new ideas and see other ways of thinking. And so that's the sense of arrogance. So when we really are like, oh my gosh, what am I? Am I even enough? Am I good enough? We might puff ourselves up to such an extreme that we manifest arrogance because we're not feeling very good about ourselves. So when you notice that you're manifesting doubt in a form of arrogance, the antidote here is to ask yourself a question. And the question is that so? Is it so that other people's arguments have no valid points, that they're just unilaterally wrong? Is it so that you know better than everyone around you? Is that 100% true? Is that so? That's the question. Somehow, becoming gently inquisitive with our experience loosens the grip of arrogance and makes us more open to other people's perspectives, bringing us back to a place of understanding and compassion. So that's the antidote, becoming inquisitive. Anxiety, jealousy, forgetfulness, arrogance, and now number 5 is slandering. So when someone doesn't feel very good about themselves, they'll often try to put other people down to bring them down to their level. I've seen that happen. I'm sure you have too. I don't think I have to say too much here. You either have acted or you know someone who's acted out in this way. People who feel connected to their basic goodness don't go out of their way to throw shade at other people. They try to use their speech to lift other people up. So becoming more mindful of our speech is a surefire way to yank ourselves out of negative patterns. This is the antidote that I'm proposing, to become more mindful of our speech. You could take a day, for example, and just monitor, how do you speak about other people? Do your words generally praise and benefit other people, or do they drain the energy of yourself and others? Do you put them down? Do you put other people down, or do you gossip? If the latter, maybe you want to apply some discipline to bring yourself back to a place of using your speech for a tool for good. The last of these 6 is no synchronization of mind and body. That's generally how it's referred to. Have you ever noticed that you don't really get your clothes snagged on furniture except when you're rushing around lost in your own head? Like that moment that you're like, blah, 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 like you're just, it's almost like there's blinders on because we're so lost in our head. That's the moment that your favorite sweater gets snagged and tears open. So if we get completely mired in doubt about our own worth and goodness, we might find that we become physically out of sorts. What actually starts in the mind starts manifesting in lack of synchronization with the body. So someone who's grounded in their own sense of being okay, as is, they generally have a natural energy to them. In Tibetan, the word would be Ziji, Z-I-J-I. Ziji, it can be translated as confidence, but perhaps a more direct version or translation would be radiating splendor, Ziji. So when we are in touch with our own basic goodness, we radiate a sense of warmth and grace. That's a way to think of it. When we are disconnected from our basic goodness, we are also connected from our own body and end up tripping on the sidewalk, dropping our glasses, stubbing our toes, those sorts of things. So coming back into the body, grounding down. Thankfully, all of these symptoms of doubt can be treated. The prescription is none other than what we've talked about before, namely noticing the stories we tell ourselves, letting those stories go, returning to our somatic experience of the present moment, being in the body. When we return to our breath, or if we're out, the movement of our body, or we're talking to someone, the conversation at hand, whatever we return to in the present moment, we might find a moment of true relaxation. In that moment of peace, we touch in with feeling whole and complete. So we can train ourselves to unhinge the trap of doubt and to come back to freedom moment by moment. So let's just take a moment here to practice at the end of our session together, just getting into the body. And let's see if we can do exactly that. Just resting with your somatic experience being in the body, gently scanning from the base all the way up through the top of the head. Coming into the breath. Allowing yourself to just rest with the natural sensation of the in-breath and out-breath. Just breathe and know that you're breathing. Relax into the breath. Noticing when stories arise. Stories about, oh, but you should have been doing this, or you're bad at meditation. This is the trap of doubt. Maybe it manifests as jealousy. Maybe it manifests as arrogance or anxiety. Just noticing those stories and saying, okay, come back to the breath. Come back to your current experience of the breath. Just rest in the body. If you'd like, you could even raise your gaze up toward the horizon, or open your eyes if your eyes have been closed. Let go of focusing even on the breath. Just rest. No object of attention. Just rest your mind. Just relax. And you can bring your attention back to the breath. But in that gap, did you have a moment where you were able to just rest and be with who you are? If so, that's quite profound. Bring your attention back to the breath. Noticing when the mind kicks up stories. No, you didn't have that sort of experience, or you're just bad at meditation. Noticing that trap of doubt. And hinging it, walking out of it, coming back to the breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes or raise your gaze, transitioning out of our short practice session. But I wanted to just give us a moment there to settle into the body and the breath. Notice how doubt manifests. Maybe it did manifest as anxiety or jealousy or forgetfulness or arrogance. Probably not, since you're going about the day-to-day life. Maybe hopefully you didn't reach for your phone, text someone and slander them, or drop it and have a lack of synchronization of mind and body. But maybe we start to notice the ways that doubt gets its hold into us. And then we have the alternative, which is that moment that we just rest. We say, oh, in this moment I'm whole and complete as is. I don't think there's a moment where we just conquer the trap of doubt and we never have to face it again. I think we have it in all sorts of things. We get into a new relationship and we say, this person can't possibly like us for who we are. If only they really knew the true us, then they wouldn't like us. We get a new job and say, does everyone actually think I'm qualified for this? Or we, have a new accomplishment, a new book comes out or whatever, and we say, oh gosh, everyone's going to hate this because I don't actually know anything about this. And, who even gave me this deal? These are just whatever our version of something new and adventurous may be. We might notice the trap of doubt rears its head. So even when we're sitting on the cushion, like we just were, we need to get really good at noticing the trap of doubt, unhinging it, and pulling ourselves out. The more we do this in the practice itself, the more we're able to do it in our post-meditation experience. As a result, we end up becoming much kinder to ourselves. We don't perpetuate the stories about how we're not good enough. We let them go, and we come back into our experience of feeling whole, complete, good as is. So this is both a meditation training and a post-meditation training. It's both. In order for us to live a life that's marked by deep meaning, care, and love. Thank you for being with me on this journey, and I look forward to us talking in our next session about how do we work with being all of who we are and coming to a sense of wholeness in times of great uncertainty. Talk to you soon.